Hello, dear friends. We are sincerely happy to welcome you again. Today we will talk to the honored Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video, you touched upon the topic of service and said that when a person speaks about something good, when he speaks about love and God, this is already service. That when a person doesn't bring into this world what is imposed by his consciousness, this is already service, because he thus makes this world cleaner. And you know, there is a great feeling of joy that this kind of service is familiar to our viewers firsthand. In their letters and messages, they share how often this greatly strengthens them on the spiritual path. Even at those moments when they stumble, precisely a good deed addressed to another person or a kind word helps themselves in the first place. It helps to ignite this flame of love in themselves, inside them. In the Bible, there are such words: one who gives others plenty of water will himself be given plenty. So one of our viewers wrote the following: based on my experience, the hardest time for me was when I stopped doing something for people. Only at such a time, at the time of being active for others, do I feel truly happy. It's amazing. Why does this happen?
Because of grace. When we really do something good and we do it for people, God helps us too. Whereas if we do something good and visible, but expect a reward for that, in this case there will be no help. Just look at how simple everything is. This is true, and many people note it. As a matter of fact, from time immemorial, people knew about it, and they do know that in reality, when we live for people, when we do good deeds, when we help our acquaintances and strangers, we become filled with power. We indeed become filled with grace, with God's power, and we succeed much better in everything, but only if we expect neither reward nor gratitude. Yet, if we have a desire to find out we've done something good, and what's the result? If we want people to thank us or to know who has done this good deed, in this case the effect works like in the experiment with two slits in physics, remember? When a wave becomes a particle. Everything is very simple, friends.
Very interesting. I mean, it's interesting that even on the path of good deeds, the system interferes sometimes, right?
And not even sometimes, but oftentimes. And it often urges people to commit a stupid deed afterwards. I mean, a person does a seemingly good thing, whatever, but for people, sincerely, generously, from the bottom of his heart, he has done it, everything seems to be fine. But in the end, curiosity and selfishness surge up in him, and he wants to see the outcome and to brag that he has done it. Then he looks and the result is not quite the way he wanted. Why? Because his intention was detected at the moment of the action itself. Just look how simple everything is.
It turns out there is a reason why in Islam, intention is the basis of Islam.
Well, of course.
It's a foundation for every believer.
Certainly, intention is sort of a goal. Well, not even sort of, but it is exactly the goal. If we have an intention to do something good, we must do it. But if we have an intention to do something good and to get something for it later on, then pardon me, this is no longer good. This is already some kind of a publicity stunt. You want to get some bonuses for yourself. Hence, you're already selling instead of doing and giving to people. You're acting not from the pure heart, but from the mind. And since it's from the mind, it will not always be good. Even a good deed.
Interestingly, it is said that Allah doesn't see either a person's
He
body
surely doesn't.
or his appearance. He sees exactly the person's heart. What is in his heart? To what extent?
The essence, the very essence of a human is actually what is perceived. As for our bodies and affairs, these are our affairs. There is a simple understanding of how the spiritual world perceives a human by his deeds, by his actions, and by his intentions. In other words, A certain action that is manifested is actually what speaks for a person himself.
depending on what values he has inside and how he acts.
Certainly. Therefore, our clothes that we put on for a supposedly religious service are meaningless, and our rituals which lead to nothing are meaningless, whereas our intention and action for other people, for the entire humanity, is already a real benefit and a real action. Everything is simple.
Our friends also shared that when they do something significant, they understand consciousness says that what they do is important for people. They noticed and tracked in themselves that this very self importance activates in them, like I'm an important person because I'm doing an important thing. Consequently, as it is said, if you want to do something well, do it yourself, or you know better how to act. Thus, they track that a sort of authoritarianism or totalitarianism comes into play.
Well, let's just say sometimes it is better to do something yourself than to entrust it to someone else.
Right.
That it does make sense if you go and do something sincerely, especially if you do it all as a gift to people, so to say. Selflessly, you don't seek anything in that for yourself. In fact, not everyone can and wants to act this way, because in reality, people are zombified by the consumerist format and have been deceived many times. Again, there are so many various religious organizations and other organizations. Lots of them have existed and still exist, which cover bad deeds with good words. Well, you can immediately see what they want. But when people sincerely, really, out of the goodness of their heart, aspire to help other people and change the world for the better, this is also obvious. However, consciousness, in fact, you see, when someone is doing something wrong, some kind of a marketing network, they simply make money by selling chalk and some fake pills, counting on the placebo effect. And it really works in about 50% of people. Those marketers spread rumors that everything is fine, people have been cured, while in fact, the marketers are simply making money. But on the other hand, they sort of come and tell stories, everything is beautiful and good. And many people believe them and listen to them. However, when it becomes clear that it was trivial chalk sold merely for profiteering, this leaves sort of a negative memory. Nevertheless, if another salesperson comes along and describes his product just as beautifully, a person buys again. However, there is a little phenomenon here. As soon as people with good intentions come who really want to help people, and who indeed work for the sake of all of humanity and the future, including the future of the person they came to, the consciousness of that person may pull out precisely all these doubts and say, "Oh, you very much resemble those distributors who were selling fake pills." Although there is no logic or similarity here at all, only that people came and told something, you see? While a person's consciousness retrieves a memory, those people came and told stories, but they were selling a product. It doesn't matter if it was good or bad, they came and were selling it. They were offering for him to buy it. Whereas in this case, people come and tell him about something good, for example. Let's say it would be nice for a person to participate in something good, not to resell goods or something else. Whatever, we don't take the creative society now. For instance, let's beautify our neighborhood, let's have a community cleanup day. What kind of doubts will immediately arise? So we will go for the cleanup day, we'll do something, while someone will write off the money and say it was them who cleaned it up, right? I mean, such little bad thoughts immediately come from the demon.
Yes, exactly.
But at the same time, when a lie comes from that very demon, the demon agrees with everything and convinces a person that it's a must. Later on, the demon says, "After all, you bought it yourself." And then he also accuses a person.
Yes, right.
This is normal.
Sort of bullying.
Opposition by the system happens quite often. However, if one person goes to another with an open heart and really without any personal vested interests, but with care for another person, then most people feel that. Of course, if the demon is strong, he can reject this purity, this God's love, but on the other hand, when there is sincere care from other people, even demons like it, after all, there's a humane and decent attitude.
There is another very interesting point, Igor Mikhailovich. Our viewers have also noticed that the Prophet Muhammad consulted his companions in matters concerning the affairs of the Ummah, not regarding the divine revelation, but the affairs of the Ummah. So there always arises a question. Why is that so? Why did the Prophet need the advice of his associates? After all, he's a very profound and very intelligent man. How can we explain this to our viewers?
Well, there is such a word as democracy. When people have to make decisions on their own, and the Prophet acted quite correctly and wisely in what concerns the life of a community,
Yes, right.
a village or a district, it doesn't matter. He invited people and decided together with them so that people would make a decision. When they make the decision, they enthusiastically carry it out. Why? Because it is their decision. This wasn't a game of democracy, it was true democracy from the Prophet himself.
He laid those foundations of the creative society too.
Of course.
Regarding how vital it is for people precisely
To
to
participate and make decisions.
participate.
Again, let's bring up a simple question, okay? Nowadays, it is hard for many people to go to their neighbors and tell them about the creative society. Indeed, friends. Well, few people live with their neighbors in such a trusting, open, and simple relationship as to be able to freely come over and tell them about the creative society. Just to sit together, have a cup of tea, or just talk, right? In most cases, there is always some kind of shyness, discomfort, or outright resistance. They are neighbors after all. But what makes a person embarrassed to go to a neighbor? What will he think of me? After all, I'll have to live next door to him. You see, therefore, I won't go to my neighbor. I'll go to anyone else,
To some distant neighbors.
to some distant neighbors, or he will inform via the internet,
Yes, right.
or in some other way. Well, the whole point is that it is desirable for a person to overcome shaitan in himself, so that he would really speak sincerely from the heart. Here it's important that if you tell a neighbor and the neighbor accepts it, and tells another neighbor, then this God's love, this grace, this sincere message that comes from you has a continuation in other people as well. Meaning you not only explain and tell a person, but you also charge or endow him or her with this same love and power which the Holy Spirit has given you, and having received it yourself, you have shared it with another person. That is, you've done the right thing, and this transmission may be quite long-lasting. I mean, one neighbor tells another, that one tells someone else, and lots of people can receive important and necessary information. However, consciousness says, what if he doesn't accept it? This also happens. After all, for a long time you've been in a neutral relationship at best, right? Or there was sort of covert disrespect for each other, envy or something else, a restrained smile and just a hello, right? Or some kind of personal interest.
One can feel that at the level of the energy structure.
Of course, definitely. After all, the first person Shaitan divides you with is your neighbor. That is why the best of people, Prophet Muhammad, taught and said. And not only he did, actually Jibril taught him.
Jabril himself.
He spent a lot of time explaining this to the Prophet. And the Prophet spent a lot of time explaining this to people, that the first ones with whom you should live most amicably and understand each other perfectly are your neighbors. Because neighbors are extremely important, they are people close to you, not in the sense of…
Even during the last Hajj, the Prophet spoke about this.
Of course.
That's how important it is. He stressed the importance and high status of a neighbor at every opportunity.
The importance of a neighbor.
Yes, right.
Right. Also, the Prophet talked about treating them with respect. Indeed, you mentioned high status. A person should regard his neighbor as a person of high status, even if, excuse me, he is worthless morally, even if he abuses alcohol, behaves badly, yet he is above all a human being, and you can help him as well. Again, look, the information about the creative society is aimed not only at saving this very neighbor, but also at saving his family and friends after all. This should be important to any person. But why are there people who do not understand, I'll put it this way, because they haven't delved into that and haven't studied it. They perceived or heard it from a wrong angle for the first time. They formed a false understanding, or just out of meanness, they immediately start rejecting it. I won't even read it, I won't watch it, even though this creative society is actually aimed at saving his life and the lives of his family and friends. Look how simple everything is.
You know, Igor Mikhailovich, this poses the following profound question. What kind of a neighbor are you?
This is first of all.
I mean, it's a very significant question to oneself, yes.
And I'll tell you what kind of a neighbor you are, my friend, based on how you treat your neighbors and how they treat you. Your neighbors say what kind of a neighbor you are to them. Indeed, they show this, meaning what kind of neighbors they are to you. That's the answer. If your neighbors are people whom you greet and smile at when you don't want to, then they respond to you in the same way, right?
Interesting. In particular, this is very important at the stage of informing about the creative society too.
Do you know why the Prophet Muhammad, the best of people, also said that? Why he said that you should take care of your neighbors and be a good neighbor? Because these are the first people who can come to your aid. And you should be the first to come to their aid because these are neighbors. And by his live example, he showed this and told about it, right?
It turns out that all the time, by his life example, he showed how important that power of connecting people is.
His whole life was an example for people. Sure, he dedicated his whole life to teaching people how to live properly and what a human should be like.
There is an interesting hadith which describes that once the Prophet Muhammad said that whoever joins up a row, he will be joined to Allah.
Right.
And whoever cuts off a row, he will be cut off from Allah. And this is interesting. It was said there that Muslims should stand shoulder to shoulder with their brothers so that there are no gaps between them.
Well, they actually stand this way during namaz.
Right.
But only during namaz, unfortunately. While in reality, his dream was an image of Muslims standing shoulder to shoulder with each other when they respect each other, love each other, take care of one another, and that Muslims should be all over the world. That is, these are people who love God all over the world. After all, in reality, Muslims are people who are faithful to God and love Him. This is how it should be. And this is how the Prophet himself taught and what he spoke about. But everything has changed.
And that you are not a believer if your neighbor is not secure from your harm, in fact.
Of course.
Yes.
This is... Well, how is that? You love God, but you don't respect your neighbor. If you do something bad to your neighbor, how can you love God? It means if you do a bad thing to a close person living next to you, then what can be said about distant ones? It means you don't respect the distant ones at all. If you don't respect people, you don't respect the Creator, the one who created them. Everything is very simple. But if you respect people and take care of them, yes, you can't take care of the whole street, for example, but you are obliged to live in normal relations with your neighbors and understand them. Even if they are mean, if they are somewhat evil, you need to understand why they are evil. There are no evil people, in fact. There are sociopaths, maniacs, but there's a sporadic, impermanent state. And sometimes it doesn't even depend on them. Those are precisely third forces, demons, and so on. Those who manipulate them. As for the people who are exposed to these attacks, they themselves suffer, even more than their victims. Well, that's really the case. Who is the first victim? The carrier of this demon, because he suffers the most. And it is at this carrier, at his image, that all of people's hatred and everything else is directed. Isn't it so? It is. And just look, no one hates, for example, if a person is hated, no one hates his demon, his consciousness for being that way. But all of the people's hatred is directed at the image of the person himself. So it goes through his image to personality, while the demon is always in the background. This is really so.
So it turns out that this advice to really treat your close person with respect and love, to treat that very neighbor of yours with love, actually, and above all, means to
To
treat
treat God
God
with
with love. Right, while strengthening yourself, first of all.
That's first of all, yes, I'll put it this way. If you treat your neighbor and your close person with love, it means that you treat God with love. But if you do not treat people around you with love, then how can you say that you love God?
Then your love has already turned into self admiration, yes.
100%. Then you live like an ordinary wall mirror. You reflect yourself and are happy with that. Well, this is really so. And all your living space is reduced to zero. The world is full of people, and people are the same as we are. They have the right to life. They have the right to joy, and most importantly, they have the right to spiritual salvation. And a whole lot depends on us, on each of us. If, for example, we familiarized our neighbors with the Creative Society project, they understood it and familiarized their neighbors, one person can raise such a wave that will cover the whole world and very quickly. It's easy.
The main thing is to defeat that in yourself.
Of course. Do you know who to defeat in yourself?
Shaitan.
Shaitan. That is, it's important to step over Shaitan in order for a wide road to open for you, my friend. So everything is simple. The main thing is love. Don't be afraid to love. Don't be afraid to love God. Don't be afraid to love your family and friends. And don't be afraid to love people around you. And when you bring the truth to other people, even in an informational format, when you talk about things that can improve their lives, even more so save their lives, and even more so give them life, then what is there to be ashamed of, tell me, or who to be ashamed of? Demons in their heads that torment and belittle them, that deprive them of life, independence, and their right to choose. Who to be ashamed of and who to be afraid of? After all, everything is simple. We are all human beings. And God is one. And the truth is one. And each of us feels it. That's the point. While the truth is God's love. So friends, let's simply love each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you. And God's love.